Welcome back, Weird Ways. I am excited to be dropping in with you all again today. I'm going to change it up a little bit in this episode. For those who've been following along my journey on Facebook, on Instagram, you would have noticed I've been approaching my business, my teachings in a very different way. I've been sharing more from a place that has felt a lot more beautiful to touch upon and going into more of the archetype of the teacher and in the creation of the moment of a big project that I'm sure I'll be sharing soon, there's iterations of it, but I don't feel right to just share the big vision quite as of yet. So I'm going to tease you a little bit as we begin to journey down this route of opening up a portal up here on Tamarind Mountain and online. And if you're interested, and by the time this episode's out, it will be live. There's going to be a temple Facebook community where people can come together to get to know themselves, connect, and there is going to be weekly meditations run both in person and online. So if that sounds interesting of you, you can find the link for that in the show notes and begin to connect into that because this is something I'm passionate about right now is to bring people back to themselves because if we look at any coach, mentor, or someone who's in alignment with their self, what they are doing is just helping people remember the truth of who they are. And that is how I see my role here. And something I can see there's a new invitation and initiation that I've been going through this whole year to bring about the next level of my vision. And that's what I'm in the creation of right now. So I'll be sharing more of that on here and on the other platforms as well as YouTube. So you can find all the links that are relevant to this below. And if you want to have a taster of what that could be in person, I will be running alongside a friend an embodied alchemy workshop here in Tambourine Mountain, which is going to be a delicious evening of reconnection to self, soul, and spirit. So that is something to join us for, and you can find the information below as well. So today I wanted to jump into something I haven't talked about much, but I know it's been one of the biggest things along my own journey of evolution, and that was the dark night of the soul. And just before I begin, if you haven't heard of the Dark Night of the Soul, this comes from St. John of the Cross, his book Dark Night, which was written in the 16th century, describing his revelations of his own dark night of feeling disconnected from God and coming back to his own faith. And this is the moment of testing. If we look at any great mystic, anyone who's been on that path, there's generally been a period of isolation, of darkness, of disconnection, and at times a total loss of faith. This is what makes up the dark night. It is what people find themselves stuck in. And this is why it's so important to talk about, because when we're looking at a lot of new age spirituality, what we see is that there's a lot of people talking about the benefits, about reaching a higher vibration and going on this journey where they get to show up more vibrant and expressive. And these are really beautiful effects of going on this journey of reconnection to self. But on the other side of this, there can be a period of the dark night. And this can be confronting and it's often not talked about. And this is the stage of the hero's journey. And I'm going to do an episode on this. If you want to know more about the hero's journey, you can find information on my blog. I've done a whole article around that just to give some more clarity, and we'll be putting out an episode on it too. In the hero's journey, we have a period of time called the underworld. And now this is the equivalent to the Dark Night. It's also equivalent to the dissolution in alchemy. This is where people are going through the initiation to strip the layers that aren't necessarily them, the layers that have conditioned them, taught them to be a certain way, and it's asking them to come back home to a deeper sense of self, of truth, and connection to their fullness. So, what happens in the dark night and why it's called a dark night is it is a moment in time, and it can be for weeks, months, years, or even decades, dependent on who you are and your own experience, where you may experience tremendous turmoil and darkness. Now, when I say darkness, I don't mean bad. I don't mean that darkness is bad, but it can feel like you are alone, you're isolated, you don't know what's happening, you don't know why. And it can be a complete crumbling of your reality and dissolving of all that you thought you knew to take you back to your essence. This is the essence of what it is. And this is what a lot of depression can be seen as. It is depressurizing. And when we think of that, it's depressurizing the soul. It's trying to strip the layers that have caught a person in their box. I did an episode on this earlier in the podcast series. You can go back and find that if you want to know more about just depression in general. But the dark night is this period where we're looking to come back and peel away what isn't true. So, what happens for a lot of people when they approach this, and how we see it in modern society, is a lot of people have their midlife crisis where it's like, I want to burn everything down and strip it all away. And then they realize, oh my God, I've made mistakes and all of that. But this can also show up as health problems, mental health, financial, relationship, or just a complete disconnection from self, which may be depression, anxiety, and a feeling of lostness. These are all symptoms of the dark night. And just because you have these also doesn't mean you are entering a dark night. A dark night is characterized by a prolonged period of that darkness. So if you have moments of this necessarily doesn't mean you are in a dark night. It doesn't mean you are about to enter one either. And the piece that needs to be learned in the dark night is the lessons that your soul needed to learn to allow itself to shine. And this is what will depend upon the length of a dark night. It's your ability to learn the lessons that are required. It's your ability to meet yourself. Because for a lot of people in modern society, it's easy to distract oneself. It's easy to pick up the phone and be like, oh, I've got all these messages to send. I've got social media to scroll. I've got all these things to do and post and just keep myself distracted. But what this does is keep you at a surface level because you're not given your cognition, your psyche, time to sink into the depths. Because what happens and why people go into it is it's a level of avoidance. They want to avoid the underlying emotions, and these emotions are what keeps the beliefs and the systems and the way of being in place. So to actually undo this conditioning means to feel these emotions. Now, in our society, we haven't been taught how to feel emotion. We haven't been taught what it means to have emotion, and we've disconnected from it. So when we start to feel, we're like, I cannot feel this. If I feel this, I will die. Who's heard that? That's been a common saying for however long. So the point of this is to actually allow yourself to begin to feel these emotions. This requires a level of safety within the body and it begin to move through. So as you notice these emotions begin to arise, you need to watch yourself because if you distract, if you avoid, you will extend the period of which you are in the darkness because there is the only escape is through. There is no turning back, there is no avoiding this. The pain will just increase. There's a saying, first the feather, then the brick, and then the bus. Now, each stage of that. And for those that don't know, it means first the lesson will tickle you like a feather. It will be subtle. And if you're attuned, you'll be able to detect it. Then a brick will come through your window and you're like, holy shit, something's not right. And if you don't listen to the brick, eventually you'll be hit by a bus. And that's when you get hit rock bottom and it's like, oh, I really needed to change, but you hadn't listened. So, what you're wanting to do is to attune to the subtleties and begin to navigate that as early as possible. But for a lot of people, because we're in this age of disconnection from self, of distraction, it takes maybe a few lessons for us to hear the voice that says, hey, what is beneath this? What do I need to feel? What do I need to let go of to come out the other side? And this is what the Dark Night is doing. It's stripping the layers of condition and bear so you can bear your soul to this world, because it's allowing you to connect to the darkness, the void space where there is nothing. So you can actually remember you are a divine light. You have a spark that is meant to be expressed in this world. And when you don't recognize that, when you believe you are a makeup of your identity and egoic tendencies, you forget your light and you do things to receive validation and love that aren't necessarily true to your being. So this dark night is helping you strip these bare. And if you can allow yourself to feel these emotions, which is the stored trauma, the somatics within your body that needs to be expressed and moved, you can then begin to reprogram and rewire yourself to be more true. It's like an onion, you're peeling back layers one at a time over and over again. And this is an infinite journey. But in the dark night, it's a realization that this is possible, that you can connect to your essence, and that all of it is you. So there's a thing that happens in a lot of spirituality that where it's like, I need to heal this trauma, I need to get rid of this behavior. Now, at times, this isn't the most loving thing. So for me, I remember when I was like, I can't be this way. I need to get rid of this. I need to kill my identity and become this like version of me that was completely different. So I thought I had to kill all the parts of me that was lazy, that liked to have a drink and all of this because that wasn't spiritual. But what I did was cut away parts of my identity, and that wasn't loving. What it actually requires is for you to integrate them into your being and find love for them. Because if you cut them away, you'll forever be fighting that and you'll have a fragmented psyche. This journey of evolution is one of integration, it's a remembrance of your wholeness, which means bringing all of yourself into yourself and finding a divine love within. And this is what is required of coming in and recognizing, oh, this is all welcome. So here in the dark night, this is the role. And people want to escape. This is the thing. It's scary, it's terrifying, it's uncomfortable. The world can be crumbling around you, and it needs to. And depending on who you were, how you were living, and what was happening, the world needs to crumble to a certain level. So for some people, because they've been so ingrained in their identity that isn't necessarily them, the world crumbles at a very deep level. And they end up in a darkness and they forget everything. The whole belief system changes, everything about them changes. For other people, they may not need to go as deep. They may not need to stay in that darkness as long. There is no determinant for how long you'll need to be there. This is the piece. People will make it a comparison. They will try and get out of it quicker because that feels safer. And they're like, if I can just pull myself from here, then I can move on and get going with my life again. Well, that's part of the conditioning that you need to meet within it, because in it, all your unconscious material is being processed. It's coming up so you can see, identify, and heal from so that you can step into a new way of being. This is the importance of the dark night. And so when people talk about surrender, I've always had a piece around this. Surrender, as in, I'm just going to go with the flow. No, surrender is surrendering the identity and the self to the fires of purification. This is an alchemical process, and the dark night is a big part of alchemy. It's a dissolution. And so when we're speaking to surrender, this is surrendering inwards to this experience, to allowing it to move through your body, to allowing the grief, pain, frustration, anger, sadness, joy to all be present within your body. And allow them to move through, because when you begin to let them move through your being, you begin to heal. There's a saying, when you feel, you heal. This is the truth of this. if you're not allowing yourself to feel, if you're not allowing any emotion to move through your body, you're stuck. There's a stagnancy within your system. And why the dark night gets more and more intense is because that is pressurizing your system. If you are not listening, if you are not allowing yourself to feel, it wants to break you. It wants to break that shell that you are using to protect yourself, the walls that you are holding back from life. And so it needs to increase the pressure, which could be by challenges, problems, health, like all the things I shared about before, because you are not listening. You are not listening to yourself. So the piece here is, can you begin to consciously peel back the layers? Can you allow the emergence of your own soul and your own being to create healing? Because the more you resist this, the longer you will stay in this state. It will not serve you, it will not keep you safe, it will keep you in suffering. The things that you are holding onto, the attachments you have, whether that be a relationship that is no longer serving, work that is no longer serving, habits, behaviors, ways of being, or just a suppression of your own desires, the more you ignore that, the more problems are going to arise because your soul is screaming at you, and the darkness will increase again and again and again until you are willing to listen. Because it's like, there is something here. You are not being punished because you are bad. You are not being punished or abandoned because there is something wrong with you. You are doing it. It is happening because you are being called back to your essence. You are being called back to the truth of your being. And the quicker you can do this, the quicker you can accept the lessons and the learnings that are required of you, the quicker you can come home to yourself and remember who you are. The dark night is serving, and in it, if you are in it, just remember this is serving you. Ask, what are the lessons I'm needing to learn here? Where am I out of alignment with my own soul? Who am I being invited into being? What is this initiation trying to show me? Because there is something guiding you here. It's been asking you to step into something more. It's asking you to share your soul with this world. It's asking you to allow yourself to be here. So the pain and the suffering, it isn't unjust. It's not because you've been condemned. It's because it wants you to be liberated. You may call that God, Source, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, anything, but it wants you to be liberated, the full expression of your being. And that is what you're being invited into right now. So my prayer for you is that you find your way, that you allow yourself to go into the darkness and meet what needs to be met, the emotions, the beliefs, the unconscious material that is surfacing within, so that you may remember who you are and the essence of what you're here for. If you're experiencing this and you need support, reach out to me. There's a free Facebook community where you can come be a part of. There's going to be teachings, lessons that will all support you and guide you during this time and community. And maybe that's what you need. Maybe it isn't, but this is your path. Trust in the process. Trust in what is being asked of you. Go with love and remember the light. Thank you all for joining me on The Weird Way. This is Dean Bentley signing out.